Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Door Advent Meditations 2023. My name is Sutton Lowe, and I'm joined with Dr. Kira Molman Pettit. And this is our meditation on Revelation 3:20. Last
Yep.
time I just said 20, but it's 3:20. And it's the verse that's, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. And this week we're talking about the phrase, I stand. So,
Yeah.
Kira, who is standing? Who's standing in this passage? What does that mean?
Well, as with a lot of questions in Christian discussions, the answer is Jesus. Spoiler.
Sunday school.
So Jesus Christ is the one who is standing. But I think one of the things that's really awesome to think about is it's God made flesh, the Word made flesh, as it says in John 1. So what does that actually mean? And one of the things that you and I have talked about is how Christianity is a really unique type of faith because God becomes human while staying God, of course, but he's doing that to accomplish something for us, not for himself. So in other like pagan myths, for example, you have these stories of a divine being becoming an animal or appearing human, but they don't do that for someone else. They're doing it because they want to get something. And so in our story, our faith, God becomes flesh, he becomes human, and he becomes just as vulnerable as you and me.
Yeah.
And, the image of Jesus being born as a baby, which is what we're thinking about with Christmas, is like, how can you get more weak and vulnerable than that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and born in a manger, and there's not flashing lights. I think when I think of God becoming flesh, I'm prone to think of maybe like Percy Jackson or something like that, where Poseidon becomes a human and has a son or something like that. And that's not really what's going on here, because God becomes flesh in the form of a baby and dwells among us. That's what John
Yeah,
1:14 says.
Like, it's a long process, right? It's
Yeah.
like these other stories, it's like really quick, you get done what you need to get done, but God lives a full human life. So I think that's also really important to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that you mentioned that is kind of resonating with me is that God did this not for himself in a way, but for some other purpose.
Yeah.
What would be that purpose? Why would God become a baby and dwell
Right.
among us?
So, how do I put this? I think part of it is God is becoming close to us. That's a really important part. So, like, we know that there's going to be this crucifixion if we think about the Christian narrative. But something that I think a lot of us forget is just the experience of God being human is so central to our faith.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think the Eastern Orthodox Church does a better job thinking about this, of like, it matters that God knows what it's like to be human and that he took that on himself. And he does that in order to die on the cross for us. So there's both of these things that are so central. Incarnation, which means becoming incarnate, so becoming human, becoming flesh, and crucifixion, which we're going to talk about a bit. But I want to kind of bring us back to thinking about this image of I stand. So behold, I stand at the door and knock is what we're talking about. And something that we've been thinking about is the image of the lover standing at the door and waiting. And a lot of us maybe feel a little weird thinking about God in that way. But it's very biblical. It's in there all over the place. There's lots of images of that. And this is the best form of love that we can think about. But there's a waiting that we're kind of trying to linger in here, I think. So there's the vulnerability of becoming flesh and becoming human baby who is weak. But also there's the vulnerability of waiting and this invitation of I'm standing at the door, but I want you to open it. I want you to receive me. And there's kind of that anticipation in that verse too, which I think is exciting.
Yeah. I love that image of the lover standing at the door, maybe going on a date, maybe doing something like that. And there's this this kind of invitation to
Mm-hmm.
love too. It's like I don't want to coerce you
Yes.
necessarily.
Yeah.
I want you to let me in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want a relationship
Yeah.
with you. I want this
Yes.
love with you. And there's a sense of longing
Yes. Yeah.
that I think is really powerful, and desire.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of gets at the heart of what Advent is about, why God
Yes.
became flesh,
Yeah.
is this longing, this love, and it's all coming together. And that's what makes Advent so interesting and powerful,
Yeah.
is that it's talking about the incarnation,
Mm-hmm.
but it's doing it through the lens of Christ's glory, of his coming in
Yes.
glory. So his coming again,
Yeah.
but also his coming in the form of weakness and
Yeah.
form of a baby for love.
Yeah, and I realized that last week we actually never defined Advent means coming. So there is this kind of anticipation of Christmas, but as you said, we know the story. We know, like, at Christmas time, God becomes a baby, he grows up, he's crucified, he's resurrected, he comes back to earth, he dwells among us once more to tell us what happened,
Yeah.
and then he ascends. And after all of that, that's where we are now, and we're waiting for this promised return.
Yeah.
So for, like, shout out for Lord of the Rings fans, Return of the King.
Yeah,
Like, that's part of our story
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I think that kind of segues us into our image for today, which is by an artist named Horace Pippin. So it's called Christ Crowned with Thorns. And Horace Pippin was a Black artist in the States. So this was in 1938, so it's a more recent piece of work. But I see a lot of kind of, I don't know, resignation isn't maybe the right word, but just there is this kind of, like, I'm sticking with this kind of on his face. And I've seen this look, on the faces of friends or loved ones when I'm in a dark place and they are frustrated with kind of how I'm beating myself up, but they're not going anywhere and they're just going to stick with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hate what you are doing to yourself, but I'm waiting here with you and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And this is the image of Jesus doing whatever it takes for us to be able to kind of free ourselves of that.
Yeah, I completely see that, and I think that's a really beautiful way of putting it. And very much like God will do anything to bring us into his love, and that's what this image is, and that's how God had to do it.
And it's so vulnerable too, right? Like you have this juxtaposition of, there's a vulnerability and doesn't look like he's wearing a shirt, but he has this kind of cape, and he doesn't have a real crown, but it's a crown of thorns, which is digging into his God-made flesh,
Yeah.
What
I really
what
like
else
that, and it
stuck
kind
out
of
to
makes
you?
me think maybe this was in the narrative where they clothe him with a garment of purple and put a
Yes.
crown of thorns,
Yes.
and they're mocking him and they're
Yeah.
beating him
Yeah.
at this moment. That could be what this image is referring to, and that's maybe why the cloak doesn't fit exactly
Yes.
right, and it's hanging
Yeah.
off of
Yeah.
his body, but also shows what kind of king Christ
Yeah.
is.
And there's so much dignity. I see a lot of dignity in this kind of waiting, and kind of return to what we were talking about before, like the dignity of the lover waiting for the beloved and knowing, like, I know I want to be with you, and I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. I think that kind of wraps up most of our show for today. Our song for this week is "Come Thou Long Expected Jesus," and I think that also gets at this heart of this
Totally.
longing, this image of a lover, and the long expectation of Jesus.
Yeah, and the second line of that song is, "Born to set thy prisoners free." So you have the human baby that is also God, that's the birth, but the power of this birth, this vulnerable human baby that is God, is going to be able to set the prisoners free.
Yeah.
So in that kind of moment of weakness, God is doing something so powerful. So I hope you guys like it.
Yeah. Well, that's what we have for this show. Join us next week for our Advent meditations.
Thanks.
Come thou long expected Jesus.